Welcome to the Meier Clinics podcast, and you just heard a quote from one of your hosts, Dr. Lisa Day. Join our licensed clinical professionals from various backgrounds as they discuss fascinating mental health topics with a wide range of guests. Meier Clinics is a Christian counseling organization with multiple clinics nationwide dedicated to treating the whole person, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. Welcome to our listening family. We thank you for joining us. Hey everyone, I am back with Dr. Paul Meier. Hi, Paul.
Hello, Kristin.
We have an interesting.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm doing good. Much better than I was, but we're going to get into why on this show. Our title for the show today is Our Worldview and How It Affects Us. And this is so pivotal because so many people, are really struggling even more than they were in 2020, and this ties into that. So and there are things that we won't touch with a 10-foot pole, but we'll get to those.
Right, and I'll make a point here that as a psychiatrist, I see clients every day during the week, and I'm just seeing a lot of people that they're doing okay. I've been seeing them for years and for medication, and people that need medication lifelong, which is it's about 20% of the population. But anyway, they've been doing great for sometimes decades. But this year, they say that a lot of them feel just sort of stunned by all the events of the past year, not just the virus, but also a lot of different events in the world, and that their worldview, they don't maybe use that word, but they say, and they do really. They say my view of the whole world and of a lot of different things is so different now than it was a year ago that it's just shocking me. It's taking me a while to adjust, and so I thought that would be a good topic for us to cover.
Agreed, and it's true. So let's start with number one, the natural progression of our worldview.
Yeah, and that's just from psychological studies that when each of us in our listening family right now was born, for about the first 18 months of our lives, we more or less felt like, it was tongue in cheek, I'm being a little bit dramatic here, but we felt like I am the world. And an infant does think the world revolves around him, and more or less it sort of does when he's young, and it's easy to understand why an infant would think that way. Right. When a 12-month-old has his mom leave the room, he may cry frequently because he feels like part of him left the room, according to psychologists anyway, and who knows what we know. We have our own view of truth. Psychologists and psychiatrists often wrong.
And we know there are grown-ups that never that are walking around in grown-up bodies, but they're still really 18 months old inside, and they're
some people narcissistic person, I guess, never outgrows that, do they? They still think they are the world.
Exactly.
But then by 18 months, most infants realize that when their mom leaves the room, they're probably going to come back, and they don't necessarily cry, and mom's a separate person. And then as we grow older, just to make a long story short, just in general, our worldview does mature as we mature. It becomes, I am the world, then me and my immediate family are the world, then relatives and friends of the family, and then neighborhood, and then school, then your city, then your state, then your country, and then you develop a view of the world depending on how much exposure you have to things that are going on in the world. Some people never have any exposure and don't have any accurate view at all of the world, and other people have traveled a lot, and I've traveled. I'm 75 years old, and I've traveled all over the world, and I've taught all over the world, every continent. And I have to say that in the last couple of years, my worldview has been really shaken up.
Yeah,
it's a lot different now. And here I am, 75, an experienced world traveler.
Right.
And my view now is quite a bit different than it was 2 years ago. That's scary. It's pretty scary. I don't want to be overly pessimistic, but I've gone from being overly optimistic to either realistic or overly pessimistic. I guess
Right.
my worldview in another year or two will determine that.
Right, exactly. And that can,
And I don't
that,
claim to be right. Go
yeah,
ahead.
and that, I mean, that's kind of, that is normal to have that change. I mean, things happen in life, and your worldview changes based on what's going on in life. And another reason why counseling is so important for anybody and everybody, because it can help you really focus on what's happened that's made you be more pessimistic, or too optimistic. I mean, just gives you that person to bounce it off of, outside of your friends and family and so on.
Yeah, you can be too optimistic. It can be dangerous. If you get a
Absolutely.
disease, it may go away and it may not. If you have cancer, probably nowadays it'll be cured, but maybe a 25% won't. And people that assume every disease will be cured don't have that's not a realistic worldview. But preparing yourself for either event is a good idea. Or if your a loved one has a serious illness, then having a realistic view. I think doctors should always tell the truth and give you a realistic view of the probability of what's going to happen and not happen. And it doesn't mean you give up or anything, but it's good to look at reality and deal with it. That's where counseling comes in. You don't necessarily go to counseling for somebody to tell you the truth, because the
Right.
counselor may not know the truth either. But it helps to share our feelings about it and get things out in the open, and then we worry less. A shared burden is half a burden.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but I think we can expand in the next one, with what worldview includes. And I preface
Yeah,
that with, when you talk about your worldview expands as we grow. And it's true. That's why at,
yeah,
6 years old or 8 years old, you go to a grocery store and you see the lunch lady at the grocery store and you're like, oh, the lunch lady lives
yeah,
other than in the lunchroom, that kind of thing. It kind of, those
yeah.
are those little things that happen where you go, oh, okay.
Now, psychiatrists and psychologists, right or wrong, think that maybe 75 or 80% of our worldview is formed by the time we're 6 years old. Our view of marriage and of moms and dads and authority figures and ourselves and things like that. But no matter whether they're right or not, no matter how old we are, we can change and we can grow. And if we have a low self-esteem because we were put down a lot as children, we can overcome that. And so that's where, we can make good choices. But our worldview includes our view of ourselves, of our father and mother figures, of eventually other authority figures in our lives. Some people who had a nice dad and a mean mom will get along fine with male authority figures and have conflicts with every female authority figure, even if they're nice, or vice versa. And so we have prejudices that we need to overcome based on our view of moms and dads and men and women and authority figures and all that sort of thing. Even races, of other countries, of other cultures. We have worldview includes what we think is true and what isn't true. Our view of God and the supernatural, our role in the world, if we perceive one at all. A lot of people don't think they have a view. They have a, a a role in the world. They just exist. Most people probably don't think they have a role in the world. Most people in the world probably just
Right.
uh, go to work and eat and buy food and sleep and work, eat, sleep, go
Right.
through life in a rat race. And then of our view of romantic relationships, of social groups at school and the world, like sports, band, clubs, social media relationships, the veracity, the truthfulness of the news and social media that we're learning, and then finding out how much of that this past few years, it's been real discouraging to find out how much of that is willful deceit to advance various views.
Hi, this is Dr. Paul Meier of the Meier Clinics. Our Christian counselors across the country have a goal of helping all those who come to us to become what God has called them to be. If you're in a situation where you're not at peace within yourself, or you just feel like there's joy that's missing in your life, we can come alongside to help you obtain peace and joy.
This message is sponsored by the Meier Clinic Foundation, a nonprofit Christian counseling ministry. The number is 1-888-7-CLINIC, 1-888-7-CLINIC.
And our view of the history of the world and the history of our country, we can read some books that say everything's perfect and everything's good, and other books that say everything's horrible and everything's bad, and it's confusing, and then how much is accurate and how much is propaganda or false negativity. Our view of our safety in the world has been shattered this past year when a worldwide epidemic, wiped out a couple million people in the world probably, and so our worldview of our own safety, and then with all the riots and things like that, and our view of the dangers in the world, including dangerous people, dangerous diseases,
Right.
potential accidents, and our view of death, whether by suicide, death by others, death by disease, or death by old age, or whatever. Our view of death, our worldview about death itself changes over time.
Absolutely. I mean, I know.
Sometimes for the better.
Yes.
Sometimes for the better, and sometimes for the worse.
Mine did for the better, but I hope it stays that way. But
mine too.
And like I said, I hope it stays that way. But I was at the death of my stepfather, and it was horrible, but it really helped me not have a fear of death at that point. So, like I said, I hope that doesn't change, but there are experiences that we can have that can make people extremely afraid. I mean, a friend of mine's stepfather, same person in the family, had a horribly long, painful death. And so she's very afraid because she saw the amount of pain this person was in before they died. So it can, that can change too.
Yeah, I'm not going to have any pain when I die. I'm going to let them numb me out all they want.
Right.
I'll let them use painkillers all they want on me when I'm dying. But I was very fortunate I was with my dad when he died, and he had a smile on his face, and his head fell into my hands, and I was with my mom when she died, and with my dad and my mom, we were able to chat right up till the last breath, and with my mom's last breath, she whispered, "I love you, Paul." I don't know if you hear that, but "I love you, Paul." And she had a smile on her face, and her head fell into my hand. And they were both of the belief, and I think they're right, that they were going to go to a afterlife where they were young again and had no diseases, and they were confident of that, and so death for them was a beautiful thing. And when I had cancer in 2017 and didn't know if I was going to live or die, I got to a point where I didn't care one way or another. Not because I wasn't depressed. I was just ready because of my parents. I was ready to go on to a better life, an eternal life in heaven. And if it doesn't exist, I'd rather believe it does. But if it doesn't exist, I'm not going to know. So, if you just disappear, I'm not going to know. But I believe it does. And so either a better life in heaven or a continued life here on earth where I can help benefit people, which is what I enjoy doing.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, and just reiterating too, your worldview can change depending on what happens outside of us. So now we're going to look at worldview and what generation we were brought up in, and this is interesting too, where you can be married to someone who's like my ex-husband, who I refer to as my husband now, but he is 16 years older than I am, so we definitely have the different generation thing going on. And he's closer to my mom's generation than he is to mine. So there's some weird confluence there that we can get into.
Yeah, it's really strange. I believe that there is. I believe that there is an accurate there is accurate truth to what really is going on in the world. Just none of us really know what that is, but it's interesting that each generation of maybe 20 years will have a different view of the world than the generation that follows. And it doesn't mean one's right and one's wrong, but I think a lot of it has to do with the way the child rearing practices that our parents had, helicopter parents and all different sorts of things. And I'm 75 and you're over 40 now, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm 51. Yeah, but please.
I
Yeah.
was going to ask
No,
you
the
your
whole
age, but,
time, Paul, I've been 28 since we've known each other. So we
Yeah.
started shows when I was 24. No, I'm kidding. No, I'm 50. I just turned 51 in January.
Okay. And so you and I are of different generations, and yet we share a lot of very similar views,
Yeah.
but I'm sure some of them are different too.
Yep.
And so there's different views between every 20 years, in age, in groups. I know when I was in my 20s, it seemed like myself and most of my peers just wanted an equal opportunity to achieve an acceptable job, to have a family, to have some security. And it seems to me, I see a lot of clients in their 20s nowadays, or early 30s, who are still living with their parents, and a lot of them don't have a job, and they just seem so, they say so. They feel lost. They feel like life doesn't have any meaning, but a lot of them that age are looking for equal results, regardless of opportunity. So, I mean, some of them are just, it's not like they're looking for a job. and if I ask them, do you want to move away from your parents? They say no. So a lot of them want equal results. They want a house and a marriage and a family, but not to have to, I mean, there's really hardworking people in every generation, including the younger generation. There's a lot of, I'm not saying everybody's that way, but there's a higher percentage of people when I was young that wanted an equal opportunity, and a higher percentage of people in the current generation of 20-year-olds that want equal results without having to do what it takes to have that. And I'll drop it at that.
Well, yeah. And I mean, things are what's going on since 2020 makes for a very different, economic.
That's true.
So
a lot of jobs got eliminated. And,
Yep. And
there are a lot of people that legitimately don't have work right now because their jobs died. Look at all the people that worked in movie theaters. My wife and I used to go to 2 movies a week. We were just commenting the other day, we haven't been to a movie in a year.
Yeah. I haven't been to get a haircut in a year. I've been to a restaurant in a year. I mean, I'm not complaining at all, but
I've been meaning to talk to you about your hair growing over your face.
No, I didn't even tell you this. I buzzed it all off like a Marine. It was easy.
No, I've been going to my haircutter for 4 months, and we've been going out to eat for about 3 or 4 months, and so we my wife and I have a pretty active life. But before that we didn't.
Yeah, I mean it's been an interesting time, but I know that same thing with generations that went through world wars. Okay, went through the Depression, and then went through the recession. I mean, there's there's something that's going on that can change your.
That's a good point.
So
my parents went through the Great Depression in 1929 when they were teenagers. And so they paid cash for their houses. They were never rich. But man, they saved up, and they said, they were very, very, very frugal, and yet I've been just careless as all get out, and I wish I was more like my parents were.
Yeah, I know. And see, if with me, my mom is very careful, very prudent, saved and all this kind of stuff, and had a regular job, and that had 401k and this and that and the other, and I have always been an entrepreneur. And so it's, feast or famine with me. So it's been, boy, do I appreciate that, she's the way she is, because it makes some things easier between us. But yeah, there's a lot of things that go on. It's hard to make a blanket statement of, the younger generation just doesn't this or that.
Yeah, that's right.
Because you
it's
just,
you
yeah,
know,
it's their
a higher percentage,
experience.
but yeah, there's a lot of hardworking younger generation.
Yeah. Well, the next one I thought was interesting, worldview in the arts.
Yeah, yeah, I hope I don't get too many people angry at me for this one, but it seems to me like, I have traveled the world, and like one place I went to is Petra in Jordan, which very few people have been to. You have to go in on horseback because the walls are 700 feet tall, and there's only about a 8-foot wide place you can drive in. So, but it's where Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom was made. But it was a huge city that it could house, maybe 1 million people or 500,000. It was written about in the Old Testament 700 years before Christ. It existed, and the whole city is carved out of sandstone. There are no houses that are built away from the mountains around it, the cliffs. They're carved into the soft rock, into the cliffs. And churches are, and cathedrals, and they have beautiful architecture. They have, the beautiful the lines around the outside doors and all that sort of thing. And there was a stadium built that where 5,000 people could sit. That was outside the place, and I'm sure they had some, buildings, for stores and things, but most of it was built into it. It was just gorgeous, and you wouldn't see anything like that today. I visited. I think you went to Ephesus, didn't you, when you went on your travel through? Did you go to Greece and Turkey, or just? Greece itself was beautiful.
Well, just
Right?
Greece, but remember, yes, it was. But remember, I came home way early because I was there with one of those mean,
Oh yeah,
mean
yeah. I
drunks.
remember now.
So
Yeah,
that was a
somebody with a
Greek,
lousy worldview. You were
yeah.
with somebody with a lousy worldview.
That was a Greek tragedy that called that
Yeah, yeah. But if you
short.
visit cities around the world, ancient cities that are 2,000, 3,000 years old, they had, like Ephesus
Right.
is in, I think it's in Turkey, but it had just beautiful architecture, marble, houses and paved streets, and it was just marvelous. And in the art, if you look at the paintings and what's considered art, the art from thousands of years ago and now was beautiful and accurate, and you could see people's faces and their frowns and their smiles, and you can see scenery and things, and it's devolved over the years to, in my opinion, to where now there's a famous modern artist that they found out had a monkey that would he'd put a big canvas up, and the monkey would grab different colors of paint and splatter it on the painting, and he would sell that as modern art and get thousands of dollars. And people thought they loved it because of the meaning of the colors chosen and the way they were lined up and stuff,
Oh
when it
my
was just
gosh.
random. But I think, and then music used to be beautiful. Listen to Mozart and all those old the old musicians and the old music, even from the ancients, even from before. I like to listen to what's called world music sometimes when I'm just relaxing, and hear the music of different cultures, and then modern music. Man, it just you'll hear the same beat over and over and over again, and they might say 5 words over and over and over again. It just drives me nuts. And to me, culture is devolving, not evolving. I think and another thing is that people with low IQ have a lot more kids than people with high IQ. People with a college education and graduate school, and the more education you have, the fewer kids you have. So people that don't have any education have a lot more kids. People from poverty-stricken countries, of course, there's smart people that just haven't had opportunity to get an education. But I believe the average IQ in the world is going down. I believe people are devolving rather than evolving, and that's just my view. If that ticks people off, then please forgive me. But there's a movie called Idiocracy where they take it to an extreme.
I love it.
They take it to an extreme, and somebody with about 80 IQ becomes the president of the United States, and and it's sort of funny. But
Yeah, I remember
it's
seeing that.
a little bit gross.
Luke Wilson, it was was the main guy in that
Yeah,
movie. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, and that's interesting, and it can be so hard to understand, where someone is coming from a younger generation or an older generation. I always hung out with people that were older. I still have many friends that are, in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. One of them's 103. I mean, I've always been that person, even as a kid. And I have friends that are younger, and the only difference the thing that I can see that are gotchas with both, when it comes to worldview, is if you think too much as you're older that things are awful. If you're too much of a pessimist, you tend to be really closed off to what any younger generation has to say.
that's a
Um,
good point.
and you also, I mean, and you have the benefit of age with that, where a younger generation, they don't have the benefit of experience, so sometimes they legitimately can't see past what they can't see because of their life experience, but someone who's older can, because you've had this life experience. So sometimes I'm like, okay, can we try to come to remember how you were when you were in your 20s or
Yeah.
in your teens, and
Oh
that
man, I
that
could conquer the world and everything was going to be wonderful. And
right.
yeah,
Exactly. So it's an interesting thing to, kind of
that
watch
that's a
come to
really good
pass.
that's a really good good advice for me. That's helpful to me right now, Kristen, because I think right now, because of the pandemic and all the other stuff that's happened, I'm sure I'm probably overly pessimistic right now, and so I apologize for our listening family if I've been overly pessimistic about the world evolving and our IQ going down, and we're,
It's,
everything's
okay.
horrible. you know,
And
I've sort of become more that way this past year or two, and I need to keep looking at there are positive things I can learn from the younger generation,
yeah, I
and things
mean,
aren't all bad, and
we have
I
a
need a little
big
encouragement.
change. We have a big change. They grew up with technology, and I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't grow up with it. It came to me younger, but I did not grow up with it, and I can just see the difference between my husband and myself. The technology piece, that's kind of easy for me in many ways, and for him it's like, okay, are you're don't ask to help me, because it means that I'm going to have to do extra work to help you with what you don't understand.
yeah, yeah.
So,
I'm like him. It's taken me a long time. I'm finally e-scribing. You've
I
been pushing that
know.
for years. I'm
I
finally
know.
e-scribing, and I love it. Now that
Yeah.
I'm doing it, I love it.
I know you're like,
But
why didn't
boy,
I do this before? But it's tough.
yeah,
It's
but it was
tough to make
just
that.
hard to change. Yeah,
Exactly. So let's do this one, which is hilarious. Our worldview and political views.
yeah.
Dun,
And the
dun,
first thing I wrote
dun.
down on that, yeah, the first thing I wrote down in my notes on that is, Kristen and I won't touch this topic with a 10-foot pole, because people are so easily offended to think their political views might be manipulated or incorrect. So I'm just going to give you a few funny quotes from Winston Churchill decades ago, but we're not going to get into politics. But our politics, the political changes have been part of the great disturbance of
Yeah.
people of all political persuasions in the past year or 2 years. There have been a lot of grieving done in disillusionment in by people of all different parties, but we'll skip that topic. Let me just read a couple funny Churchill quotes, and I'll let you all figure that other one out for yourself. But Churchill said, a fanatic, not necessarily a political fanatic, but any kind of fanatic. A fanatic is someone who can't change his mind and won't change the subject. So
Yeah.
they have a view, and they keep preaching it and preaching it and preaching it. And if you don't believe it, then they don't even want to listen to alternatives. And then he said, politics is the ability to foretell what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen next week, what's going to happen next month, what's going to happen next year, and then to have the ability afterwards to explain why none of it happened.
Yeah.
So politics takes a little humility. Sometimes we have to eat crow, things that we thought were true weren't, and things. Okay, then another one. He says, if you're not a liberal, when you're in your youth, you have no heart. But if you continue to be a liberal when you get older, you have no brain. No, of course, that was his.
Right.
That was
That's
his
view.
view. I'm not saying that. Yeah,
Well,
that was his view. That as you become older, you become more.
right.
When you're young, you think if you give everybody money, they'll all be happy, and when you're old, you think if you give everybody a job and let them earn their own money, they'll be
Right.
happy. But
Well, I like this. I feel like it fits because I want it to. But I was watching a news program. I think it was with Brian Williams. But the only reason I clicked on it on YouTube was because it was about dogs. So I clicked on it, and FDR was talking, and he was saying, listen, I have been called this, I have been called that. And he actually gave examples of, how people have attacked him and said he's stupid and that he thinks he's indispensable and all the ridiculous stuff that the public, I mean, you have to go into politics wearing, rhino hide. Otherwise you just aren't going to make it. And why anyone wants to do that, boy, some people want it for power. Some people want it because they really want to be of service in that way. And
yeah,
either way, you're walking in with, a flak suit to just survive it. But
it's not today. It's not.
yeah,
it's scarier today than it was in the past.
Yeah, it's although I don't know about that because, what about the times when, people were getting hauled in and, told that they were, they were communists, and a lot of that turned out to not be true. I mean,
yeah, that's true.
So it's been,
Yeah,
it has, I mean, you got to understand too, I grew up around, at least from my teen years on up, I grew up with around my stepfather, who was a historian. So he would sit down. This is where I've missed him, and my mom has missed him so much during the last several years, because we could go to him and say, well, what about this is happening? This is something we should freak out about. And he could easily pull out, I mean, he had his PhD, in history. So he would pull out things and he'd go, look at that generation, look at what they, and what everyone was upset about, and the people were dying and losing their jobs and homeless and now look what's happening now. You can see the trend. So it was really helpful. But for FDR, I thought this was hilarious. He said, I don't care if you say that I'm brainless. I don't care if you say that I'm, that I think I'm indispensable, which is ridiculous. But if you attack my dog, I'm going to be upset about that. And I thought that is so awesome.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think we forget, and I've done it too. I did it last night, so I'm calling myself out here. We forget that there are human beings involved, like when we have road rage and we're angry at a driver because they cut us off, and then we want to do something to them, and we forget, okay, this is a dad or a mom, or this is a person, not, and we do that a lot. And I did it last night. I was watching a show about people who live off the grid, and I almost can't watch network TV anymore because of all the commercials and all the stupid cutaways that they do to things that you don't have to deal with on non-network television. But anyway, I'm watching it and I'm getting irritated with one of the people that's part of this show. And I'm starting to say, oh, this guy is so annoying. And blah, blah, blah. And then I had to catch myself. I looked at my husband and I said, I'm doing that thing that I complain about, and I'm forgetting that this is a human being. And I'm just throwing out, he's awful and blah, 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 blah. And I have to stop doing that because it's so easy to, I mean, the number of times isn't many compared to some of my friends that do shows and stuff. But, I've definitely had people write in and say, you're a narcissist, because they listened to one show that I did.
Yeah.
And then they take the time to go and write a review about that. And I'm like, and then I call my friends who, get like 5 million views on their YouTube videos about the subject. And they're like, please play a tiny violin. I get 50 emails a week telling me what a narcissist I am. So they're like, you got 1 or 2? Stop crying, But we have to remember that, that our worldview and our political views are going to change as we go through different things, just like the other sections that we've talked about here. But
20 or 30 years ago,
Yeah.
20 or 30 years ago, I talked to Dr. Criswell, who was about probably 93 already and still preaching at a church here in Dallas that had thousands and thousands of members. And I asked him, I said, doesn't it bother you when people criticize you? And he says, he says, well, Dr. Meier, he says, when I was a young preacher, yeah, it used to really bother me and all that. But now that I'm 92, it bothers me about as much as a fly on a cow's horn.
Yeah, it's true.
So,
And you shared, like how you stopped talking at one venue for a long time
yeah,
because they,
yeah.
I think I
Two
have,
people out of 100 would criticize me, and the other 98 would love it. So it bothered me so much I quit going.
yeah, boy, have I done that too. We should do a whole show, and listeners, here you're part of the creation process, but we should do a whole show on criticism, what's constructive,
Yeah,
what's not, how it changes as we age.
yeah,
That would
and
be
how to
good.
learn from it
Yeah.
constructively without letting it get to us.
Yeah.
Okay, then
Okay.
the last one.
Yep.
Well, go ahead. You can
Okay.
announce it. Go ahead.
Our worldview versus the truth.
Yeah, there's a lot of people nowadays that say, "Well, I have my truth, you have your truth," and all
Yeah.
that, and as though there isn't such a thing as truth.
Right.
And we do have different views of truth. There's nothing wrong with having different views of truth, but I think it's important to realize there is a truth. There's the truth about the world. There's the truth about you. There's the truth about God, and none of us, we're all guessing. Kristin and I have said many times on the air that whenever two people meet, there's six people present.
Right.
The two as they see themselves, which is not accurate. The two as they see each other, which is not accurate, and the two as they really are, which neither of them really know. And as a psychiatrist, I believe that each of us may know 20 to 40% of ourselves, depending on how much insight we've got. But at least 60% of ourselves, we don't even know. And the older I get, the more I learn. I'm still learning things about myself in 2021 that
Yeah.
I never knew before, and so it grows. But it's dangerous to assume that your view about everything, including yourself, is true. It's better to assume that you're probably wrong and that you're guessing, but your guess is getting hopefully better. And 2 and 2 is 4. The truth about math is that 2 plus 2 equals 4. So there could be a grocery store where the owner says, well, my truth is that 2 plus 3 equals 4. And so you go to pay your bill and it's, it's more than what you expect, because he says, well, my truth is that 2 plus 3 is 4 and you only paid 2 plus 2. So, you'd be really ticked off, and you should be. But there might be a customer whose truth is that 2 plus 1 is 4. So they go to the bill, pay the bill, and it's a lot more than they expected to pay, because it's based on 2 plus 2 is 4. And so the customer and the owner both have worldviews that are inaccurate. And so there is such a thing as truth, which is 2 plus 2 is 4. So you're not free. You're free to have whatever view you want, but you're free to be right or wrong. Yeah. There is a truth, and I encourage people to seek the truth. There's a truth about God, whether he exists or not, and I believe he does. Einstein believed there couldn't possibly not be one, because he saw the tremendous things of the universe and the laws of the universe, and all. They said that I think this all bounced together out of nothing is just almost delusional. There's got to be a greater power behind all this, but we're not going to get an argument about that. but our view of God, there's 8 billion people on planet Earth, and if you had everybody write a couple-page essay on their view of God, there's no two that would be exactly alike, if you have a brain, unless you just parroted what you were taught.
Right.
But there's no two that would be exactly alike. And what that means to me is that all 8 billion of us are a little bit wrong. Because if no two of us are right, are agree with each other, then all 8 billion of us are a little bit wrong. So none of us really knows the whole truth about God. But I love God, and I want to get to know God better the older I get. But my view of Him and my relationship with Him, I believe it's growing. But sometimes things happen that make me see things a little differently. Then sometimes I argue with Him. Then I laugh at myself and say, "Who am I to argue with Him? Am I smarter than God?" And I know,
Right.
And well, even our view of God changes. And for people to say, well, my truth is that God is a large hornet with green eyes and blah 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 blah. Well, you're an idiot. Maybe I'm being mean, but you can have that view, but at least it'd be good to try to figure out who the real God is rather than just make up some fantasy and start a new hornet religion or something. But we're all guessing what the real God is like, and it's a lifelong journey, and I don't think we'll know until the afterlife the whole truth about God and what He's like. And like I said earlier, if we're wrong about there even being one, then I guess when I die, I won't find out anyway. So
Right.
I'd rather have a relationship with God and possibly be wrong than to not have a relationship with Him. And I believe He is. My own belief is that there is a God, and that as a scientist, I've got 5 degrees. It doesn't mean I know more than anybody else about what God's like. But as a scientist in human physiology and in medicine and all the things I've studied, the body has 30 trillion cells, and each one has like 10,000 different enzymes and parts in it. At least, probably millions if you look at subparticles and protons and neutrons and all that. And when you study the human body and electron microscopy and all that, to think that all bounced together out of nothing, to me is like schizophrenia, or it's like delusion. I mean, how could that? That's like saying Webster's dictionary came about as a result of an explosion in a printing factory, and all
Right.
the letters lined up together, defining all the words in the world. And so that's just, if that ticks off some of our listeners, then please forgive me. But I believe that there is a truth about God. There is a true God, and we're all guessing. We do have to guess a lot of the things about Him, and what God's like and all that. And but something I encourage people to pray is, dear God, whatever you're like, I don't really know exactly what you're like. And if you exist, I pray that you'll show yourself to me and help me to see more what you're like and how I can relate to you. I think that's a safe prayer for anybody to pray. Even if you're an atheist, it's a safe prayer to pray. Because if there is a God, and I believe there is, but if there is one, and He's a good God, then He will show Himself to you. He will become closer to you. And so it's a safe prayer to pray.
I kind of look at things too. There's so much with mental health. Everyone's mental health. Remember, we all have it. Not everyone has mental illness, but everybody has mental health. It is, sometimes when we talk about being positive or, doing the things that you need to do to keep yourself in a mindset that makes life more enjoyable for you. It's okay to believe things that don't harm other people, that make it easy for you or yourself, that make it easier for you to get through this thing called life. So if
Right.
you don't have proof that, or you really feel like you've got to have this proof to believe something, you don't. You can believe things and not have this, irrevocable truth. But I know that I appreciate numbers much more than I ever have in my entire life. And it's around the same statement because yes, 2 + 2 equals 4. There's no getting around that. There's no, well, you're not thinking about the gray of a situation, because sometimes 2 plus 2 could equal 5. I mean, there's no such thing as that, right? You
Right.
can't
That's right.
argue that, period.
That's
So
right.
it
Right.
does make you, I mean, for someone that's always been kind of nervous about math and all that kind of stuff, as I get older, the more I appreciate that there are things that are just a fact, and we don't have to, do anything around that. And they make for a funny joke when I do have people come to me and they're trying to tell me, no matter what, that 2 plus 2 equals 7. And no matter what
Mhm.
I do, that's what they're going to believe. And they have all this evidence, quote unquote, to back it up, because that's their quote unquote truth. It makes it so much easier for me to go on with your bad self and think that good for you, and just let it alone, because who cares?
You know, Kristen, what you just shared really means a lot to me. And something that you just said is that we can't let the truth get us, depressed and going through life depressed.
Yeah.
The truth may be discouraging, but we do need to learn ways to deal with it. We do need to have at least one other person in our lives, preferably more, that we can share our happiness and our sorrows and our feelings with. We need to love and be loved. We do need a degree of optimism that no matter how bad things may become in the world, economically or disease-wise or whatever,
Right.
that there's still things we can be positive about. We can still love and be loved and survive. So I appreciate that. That's a good reminder, because
Absolutely.
sometimes I get really discouraged lately.
Yeah, I mean, and
Um,
I have too. I mean, my God, I really have. And I have so many friends, people that out of the woodwork that, I didn't really have a close friendship with, but they're a colleague and they're calling because their kid is suicidal, or because their mom is suicide, whatever, because people are feeling this way. So it's go as much as it can be hard to hear, a lot of people are going through what you're going through. When I say that to people, I don't mean it like, oh, then you shouldn't feel the way you do. I never mean it like that, of
no,
course. I'm
right,
like, hey, because it does help me to know, I'm right in there riding the bus, the same bus as everybody else. And we're all
right.
hanging on to the back of the seat or to the handrails or whatever, to try to get through this bus trip together. So that really helps. And it helps too. I have much more of an appreciation. And this has really helped my worldview versus the truth too. I have so much more of an appreciation for the people in my life that know my gotchas, like they know them. And I appreciate that I don't run in shame from them anymore. I was telling a friend of mine the other day that I have learned something about being kind to myself, being a friend to myself. You and I've done so many shows on this, Paul, but I will just realize, or one of my friends that knows my gotchas will also notice, gosh, you are awfully pessimistic today. You are awfully down. There's no light at the end of any tunnel. There's not even a tunnel for you today. And I know now to go, okay, Kristen, my friend, my dear friend that's been through everything with me, you are not allowed to make any decisions today. You're going to go to bed and get some sleep, and tomorrow will be a different day. That's been huge for me. And the same thing that my friends who know who I am, but I may be talking negatively, I may be paranoid as heck, all these things, like my worst behaviors, my worst scotches coming out, that they can say, Kristen, you need to not make any decisions today. And I want you to go to
Hmm.
bed. And that has helped me with my worldview. It's helped me with what I know to be the truth about myself and about others in the world. Those things just, and really to me, they're acts of kindness, have helped me tremendously.
You know what, Kristen? What the point that you just shared is the most important one that we've shared in this thing. I had 6 points in my outline, and I just added a seventh one. Just copying what you were saying. I mean, you probably need to reword it, but I put, in spite of the truth in the world, even the negative truths, we can survive with the help of God and others and a realistic, optimistic view of how to survive. A realistically optimistic view of how to survive.
Yeah.
That's sort of what I mean, that's, you need to reword that for me, but because what you shared just now is so encouraging, and I think it's more important than any of the other 6 points that I shared, is that, you know, ending with a positive.
Yeah.
You know, because I guess that just about everything I've shared is sort of negative.
No, it isn't. You need to stop doing that. No, everything that you share, you see, Paul, you need to make limited decisions today, and then you need to go home because you keep saying
Yeah.
that you're being negative and you're not. Everything,
Yeah.
you are in the reality, and so am I, of what the masses are feeling right now in February of 2021. I mean, you're seeing it
Yeah,
with your
being a
patients.
psychiatrist, I'm hearing people's innermost thoughts every day.
Exactly.
You know, what they're thinking, what they're feeling,
and you're human. You have your own stuff going on with what's happening in the world today. So you're not being negative. You're trying to swim. That's the thing with me. I mean, I have wanted to go to counseling last year, and this year, my counselor retired, and she would never have done telehealth, but I've gone to other people, but I've thought, I could really use a psychologist or a psychiatrist. But then I think, well, they're struggling too, and other people need them more than me. And, I do that whole baloney, so I didn't go to counseling. I just went to, my friends and stuff and did that there. But, it doesn't mean that I was being pessimistic. That's reality. Our mental health providers, where the heck have they been going to get help? There are first responders on the field when it comes to mental health crises. So
now here in a group, it's easier because we share a lot with each other.
Right.
But hey, by the way, I thought I would hate telehealth as far as counseling, and I really love it. It's not so bad. I thought, well, how can you not be right in front of the person and person to person? But in reality, the person I'm talking to is 12 inches away on my computer screen. It's like giant FaceTime. It's like me and my best friend talking by FaceTime to each other. It's we can, they can share their feelings and everything. They can cry there or whatever they want to do. Absolutely. It's just like being there. It's not so bad after all.
Yeah, it really, it's lovely. I mean, you get kind of sick of it, but and people complain a lot, and you have to have an outlet. We're going through a lot. So now people are complaining about Zoom. Well, you know what? Even if, let's say, it was some other kind of disaster that happened other than a pandemic, and so you didn't have to do stuff on the internet, well, then you'd be complaining about in-person stuff and how stressful it is because however, there's always going to be that. We're in a stressful time, period. End of story. We're all going to get through it.
Thank you for encouraging me and encouraging our listening family with the positive thought that you ended our program on, that we still have to survive.
Yep.
And we can do it. And don't be bitter, and don't get depressed. Because bitterness is what.
Try not to.
Depression is anger turned inward. So the more angry we get, as far as being bitter, the more depressed we're going to get. So we need to say, okay, how can I roll with it? What can I do? How can I survive?
Yeah.
And life's tough right now. Life is difficult, but what can I do? And then we can feel good about the things that we do to survive in this tough world that we're living in right now.
Be understanding, be kinder to yourself, be kinder to others. That's it. I mean, just those things alone will get you a long way. And, and then when you need to go to bed and not make any decisions because you're too negative, do it.
Yeah. Give God the night shift.
Exactly.
You can worry about stuff during the day, but let him worry about it at night.
Exactly.
Get some good, peaceful sleep.
Well, Paul, thank you again. I love it when I love our shows. I love them. So thank you so much for doing this one with me today.
And thank you. Thank you.
And listeners,
you encouraged me.
Good.
I feel better already.
Good, me too. That happens when we talk anyway. But yes, so
Yeah.
listeners, I hope you feel that way too. And thank you for tuning in to another episode, and we will catch you next time. We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Tune in next time for another engaging discussion on relevant mental health topics. If you have any questions about Meier Clinics, please visit our website at meierclinics.com. That's MEIER clinics.com, or call us at 888-7-CLINIC. Don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes, Stitcher, or any of your favorite podcast apps. And please note that we are a member of and produced by Mental Health News Radio Network, MHNRnetwork.com.